Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room. And we trust you're enjoying the holiday season. We certainly are, but we haven't forgotten about you. We thought, let's get that Rumble Room up and running for another week because there's so much to talk about. I'm Robin Adair, and joining me is my co-host with the most, the Croatian sensation himself, John Jurisic. And John, we have so much to look forward to in 2023.
So much to look forward to and so much physical manifestations from my end. I understand from comments, discussions, a few people are annoyed with all my movement, and I just love to continue annoying them, and I will in 2023. And you know what? There'll be good and bad. You never know exactly how the year will unfold. I will say on my wish list for 2023, and I think this is on everyone's wish list, is the gradual disappearance of COVID-19 and its various new variants. I don't have to worry about being in front of anyone. I don't have to worry about traveling. We've had the new normal for a while, and it's been a lot better. It's certainly, but I'm ready for normal. I'm just ready for normal. Also this year, I plan to continue to ride my e-bike as much as I can to stay away from illness and enjoy the fantastic biking trails in our region.
Well, I'm glad you brought up cycling, John, because gosh, wouldn't it be interesting if we could discuss that right now? And John Luton, the former city councillor, has offered up some Stats Can information on commuting by bicycle across Canada, including Victoria. They are from 2021. He does make the point that it was during the pandemic. Overall, commuting was down because people were working from home. However, I think he was also pointing out that the numbers weren't really increasing that much either. People still are largely traveling by car or public transport when they're going to and from work. And I think you could also look at this in a different way, John, which I'd like to explore for a minute. Let's take a look at that stat for a second here. In the survey, 9.64% of Victoria commuter ridership is by bicycle. That's 10%. I'll move it up to 10%. 90% don't ride their bikes as commuters in Victoria, despite what you might be hearing. In Oak Bay, it's up a bit more than that. 11.28% are actually using their bicycles, so good on them. It really drops after that. Saanich at 5.1%. People that are riding their bikes to and from work, and Esquimalt at 7.4%, a little closer to town. Only 2% out in the western communities, places like Colwood and Langford. And if you compare it to other cities, I know that Montreal's at about 3%, Toronto's at 2%, Vancouver checks in at 5%. Yeah. So, John, along with all of these bike lanes, and all of this pro-bike talk, and I have nothing against people riding bicycles, and I have nothing largely to say about bike lanes other than we shouldn't overstate the numbers of people that are using it. And, we have roads being blocked, like Richardson, and, that's for 10%. And I don't think you even have that many riding up and down Richardson, and cars are being blocked here and there and everywhere. So you're a passionate cyclist, Johnny. What do you think?
Robin, I also was startled by this low number. You tend to think with all the discussion around these lower Vancouver Island bike lanes that this number was up around 50%. But I have to tell you, the response since the numbers have been released online have certainly caused me to at times now be annoyed and misguided by what I think is a narrow view of the community bike adoption statistics. Changing the way that we move around is a major cultural and community shift that will likely truly only manifest itself with generational change. It's a massive shift, capitalization, to incorporate one's bike as a primary transportation mode. I get that. So many factors come into play. For example, weather, clothing, carrying accessories, work-based cleaning facilities, bike safety infrastructure, fitness levels, family pickup considerations. When one takes all these factors into account, it's truly remarkable, actually, that our community has reached a 10% countrywide leadership threshold, despite it seeming so low. So please, to my fans, to the viewers on VRR, enough with the misguided criticism. Massive cultural and transportation schisms take generations to shift. And I haven't even touched upon the massive health-based positives that will occur with these generational shifts.
And you talk about generational shifts. I mean, even within a generation, it's younger people who will be willing to ride bikes and commute to work as a rule.
Yes.
And older people will do it sometimes if the weather's decent. But it's not going to happen in this huge universal way. There's this dream of Victoria becoming Amsterdam. And I think there's probably a lot of people in Amsterdam who wish they lived in Victoria, frankly. So anyway, I think that Marianne Alto and her council, I hope they're taking all this into consideration. There are some huge bike advocates on this new council, and some of them are really keen on more bike paths. If they're serious and take a second measured look at what has been done over the last number of years, at the very least, they will hopefully slow down on bike lanes, and they will focus on the priorities of the wider community. We had Marianne Alto on this program just a couple of weeks ago, and she promised that she was going to be taking careful measure of the situation, and at least some of our viewers are not buying it, John.
You know, I was buying it, but there's real suspicion that this council is not going to be so transparent. And I was impressed with the interview that we had with Mayor Alto, but obviously not everyone is giving her the benefit of the doubt. Stuart writes, "Why the devil are they going in camera so bloody much already? What are these people hiding from us?"
And Kelly writes, and Kelly, you can see he's put some real thought into this note. Tight financial times, according to the new mayor. So that tells me it's time to review the many aspects of city services. Do we need a poet laureate or an artist in residence? Are we too involved in paying for social services funded by the province or the feds? Which of this new regime will ask questions versus simply getting more dollars from taxpayers of Victoria?
So, Robin, we came out of a council last 4 years in which we've had these disparate opinions way on either side of every issue. And boy, nice to have a few comments to balance the scale, that maybe we'll just kind of come down to the middle and not be so intense about our reactions. So we certainly had, and encouragingly, a different take on Mayor Alto, as Larry writes. Thank you. It's very refreshing to hear from that Victoria mayor speaking on all these issues.
And Jeff talked about the homeless arriving on the island because other cities are removing their tents, and this disadvantaged crowd are arriving here in large numbers because we offer so many services. Bray says it's time to reduce services and make our streets safer.
Well, Jeff has also received a lot of viewer feedback, especially on Twitter. It kind of exploded there, and it's pretty supportive stuff. For example, Linda writes, "What's the answer? Does anyone have the balls," and we can say that on our show, "to do what you," brackets Jeff Bray, suggest, "say we are full and go elsewhere?"
Pierre also writes, "Jeff, you're absolutely right. Good on you. How we're going to stop them from joining is another story."
And JJ, not me, simply says about Jeff Bray, "A man that talks the truth." There's so many layers, Robin, to this homelessness issue. Honestly, I don't even have a clue how we're ever going to solve this. There are people in real distress. Okay, they don't choose this life, and they need a lot of help. They need access to treatment, health treatment to addiction, mental health, and a lot of other issues. Social workers are providing a tremendous service on the front line. I don't know how they do that. But what's to be done?
Well, we need to definitely take some steps here, and we want to discuss this in more detail. We turn to somebody who knows a thing or two about this from a legal perspective, Troy DeSouza, a Victoria lawyer, who believes we must move away quickly from the catch and release system of serious criminals, and we need to clean up those streets. So let's zoom him in. Now joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room, once again, somebody that we've really enjoyed having on the show before, Victoria lawyer Troy DeSouza. Troy, great to have you back.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, John. Good to be back.
Troy, the Premier, our new Premier, David Eby, has unveiled a new Safer Communities Action Plan. And there's been a lot of talk about how this could be the end of catch and release in British Columbia and maybe even in Canada, if it's something that's copied across the country. I don't know, but I read the action plan. It looks full of good intentions, but is there really enough meat on the bones?
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me as there's a lot of optics with the plan. There's certainly some imagery and some attempts to look like it's moving in the right direction, but some of the measures don't seem as strong as they could be. And, there is talk about catch and release, but, we really need to have catch and comply, which would actually get people to follow the law and make people safe. So if the goal is public safety, I think we're all, hopefully now all on the same page. The Premier's now has, in his past capacity as a minister, both AG and Minister of Housing, has had 5 years to do this. So it's kind of late to the game to now announce this now, but any help and any understanding of the problem, the issue is great. But this is just his first step.
Troy, it's so great to have you back. And I suspect that you're carefully studying this back and forth between the province and the federal government in terms of the law and bail. The province pretty clearly is pointing the finger at Ottawa and saying it needs to change its procedures. Do you agree with this?
Well, I mean, I think the feds and the federal government have a lot of work to do. The jurisdiction, as you know, John, is with the feds on the criminal code, though. So they have the complete jurisdiction to amend and change that accordingly, and the provinces follow suit. Where the provinces come in is implementing aspects of the criminal code, which they do through our provincial courts and through our BC Offence Act. So as a municipal prosecutor, I deal a lot more at the provincial level for local governments, and that's another level of government that's also got a role to play here as well. So I guess well, there's a lot that the federal government can do. The province is saying to them, this is the things that you need to do on bail. There certainly would be constitutional issues there as well, but fundamentally, if we're serious about public safety, I think it would be great to empower the 175 local governments there are in BC to do things that will actually help public safety. And if there's one, a couple of words or something I'd want to leave with your viewers, it's the words broken windows, right? Broken windows. Why are we letting things fester until they become criminal actions where actually people are violently hurt or killed when we can deal with problems before they get to that level? And as some of you know, this was a strategy used by the darkest, during the darkest times of New York City in the 80s, under Rudy Giuliani and Bernard Curry and others in the law enforcement community. And it led to remarkable results. I mean, even things like having police and law enforcement at the subway terminals to arrest and process people right there led to a significant drop in crime. And, when you look at places like New York, where people are being pushed in front of subways, or the people too scared to go on a subway because, there's real danger there. This is the kind of things that even the current mayor, a Democratic mayor of New York, is now saying, let's go back to some broken windows. It's amazing, actually. You look at the debate right now in New York, they're finally coming back full circle and looking at broken window strategies. So again, I come back to BC and say we can actually solve some of these problems by dealing with the little things on the streets, the street offenses that, with all due respect, the Crown Provincial doesn't prosecute because in their world of criminal matters, and they're fairly busy, it's just not a priority for them. And so why not we empower those local governments, those 175 local governments who work with police, who work with bylaw to deal with those street offenses before they actually turn into something more serious.
You know, you mentioned in civic government, and we had a pilot project here being run with the Victoria Police and the blessing of the city, and they had police going out with social workers and dealing with situations and calls. And now we have this new action plan where they're talking about response teams that will include police, prosecutors, probation officers, all going to get together and deal with these on a case-by-case basis. But do we really have the resources right now for all of that?
True, and it doesn't look like there's actually that much resources put to that, Robin. I mean, they're going to have this little response targeted team.
Well, do we have all those people available to do that? I mean, maybe we have the police and some social workers, but to have the probation officers out there and to have prosecutors out there. I mean, you're a prosecutor sometimes, you're a lawyer. Do you have a lot of free time to be out on the streets evaluating people?
No, but again, we don't need to do that. I mean, the people who are best effective on the streets are the people who work on the streets, like police, like bylaw, like healthcare workers, like other, I know they've talked about getting some more mental illness folks involved. All good ideas, but it's about the proof is in the pudding, and what exactly are they going to do, and how are they going to go about doing it? I mentioned broken windows. Let me talk about the other two words I think is really important when we're dealing with street level enforcement. And particularly with medical treatment issues, containment and treatment. Those are really important, because a lot of the things that we get or perceive to get from on homelessness issues actually involve mental illness and drug addiction or alcohol addiction, right? So it's illness, mental illness, and addiction. And what the current strategy has been, at least with the province, and including Minister Eby, when he was a minister and housing minister, was dealing with it as a housing issue and not dealing with it with the other aspects, which are the root causes of housing. I mean, you know, I don't want to be too crass, but when you're dealing with front level enforcement, as I've been doing, and we have folks who are in that bad situation, where they're, say, living in a tent city, and then they're going to use resources at, you know, for instance, a mall nearby. I mean, we actually had evidence where they go to use the washrooms, and instead of even pulling the seat up on the toilet seat, they don't. They just leave the full seat down, and they're going to the washroom like that. That was in a court affidavit that we used. Exactly. Now, you can't tell me that that person doesn't have some deep problem that they should be out on the streets. Yet that's what we have to deal with. So there's no point sending all these targeted teams and stuff and going to the streets and saying, oh, okay, yes, you have a mental illness, or, oh, yes, you have some addictions, unless you actually try to solve that through some containment and treatment. And you know, I'm not saying we have to put them into institutions like we saw in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or something, but we do need to have some level of containment that's helpful to them getting off either their addiction, or giving them some treatment, perhaps even with some other medical assistance on that, to deal with their illness. But if you're putting these people on the streets, I mean, these folks are fighting with law enforcement, people who wear uniforms, people like the police who have badges and guns. I mean, you probably recall the police officer in Burnaby that was killed by a homeless person in a tent not too long ago. I mean, if they're willing to take out a police officer, how is the public going to be safe?
Yeah. Troy, on a little bit lighter side that lends itself to my next question. I know as the interview began, I was at least expecting you to say, John, what a great haircut you have. And of course you didn't. That's okay.
I apologize.
Because you thought about it. You know, if you had said it, I would have said to you, well, it's because I went to my stylist this morning in downtown Victoria. Okay. I rarely get to downtown Victoria, but this morning I did. And it highlighted what I call Skid Row Victoria on Pandora and the tent cities and really the extraordinary problems around this issue. So this lends itself now to my question to you. Vancouver's pro-business council, recently elected pro-business council, is working to shut down tent cities. And some of these folks are appearing on the streets of Victoria. I probably saw them this morning, where a lot of services and free meals are available. Okay. Do we need a universal plan where the same standards, law enforcement standards, are applied across the province?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, because you know what you get is something very similar to what happens, they say, in the US when they're not enforcing the southern border, right? All these different states are getting involved and saying, well, we'll move them over here to Martha's Vineyard. That's a great place because they're frustrated, right? And I can understand Vancouver's frustration with that issue. They deal with a huge number of permanent homeless encampments that rotate all over the time. And so if they've got a new council, they've got a mandate to clear this up. The simplest way that they're going to think about doing it is to put them on the ferries and send them to Victoria, right? And they can do that because they're saying, well, this is a so-called, to use the word euphemistically, sanctuary city. There'll be services there. There'll be places they can go. They can get all the support services they want, but that's not good for Victoria as well. So again, you say, is there a universal type program? I would say that the buck has to stop with the province. It has to stop with the province because this is British Columbia, and they shouldn't be letting all the cities sort of say, okay, well, not in my backyard, get out, go to Victoria, or go as they were going to Nanaimo. I mean, this is we're getting to these urbanized areas. They're actually going as far as Prince George, right? We actually have people in Prince George.
Wow.
We still have a tent city out there for the longest time. So people are going to go where they can go, where it's like a path of water to the least resistance. And so if it means they get paid ferry and some bucks and some food to come to Victoria, then they're going to do it. But ultimately, the province should step in and say, we are going to enforce the rule of law. And that would be my other third point I want to leave with your viewers, is that the rule of law is being undermined. It's been undermined for the last 20 years. And I don't know if you guys were young, you're not as old as I am, but I remember a time when if you were setting up some sort of encampment in a public space in downtown Victoria, you'd be arrested right away, right? You'd be arrested regardless of the reason. And so the thing is, we've become into almost like a victim society where we're thinking not in terms of the greater public good, but sort of those individuals who have a very specific need.
So love getting a perspective from Troy DeSouza on this important issue. We really want to do something about the crime, but we want to be compassionate and help people that are in need. If they need medical assistance, let's get it. If they need help with their addictions, let's get that help. But we've got to do it in a more proactive way. Putting them simply in housing just doesn't cut it. And on that happy note, John, it's about time to say goodbye.
Robin, once again, another great show. Our bridge show, so we're calling this, takes us into 2023. I can't believe it. Hard to believe that's going to happen. I want to wish everyone a very happy new year. Be safe, be healthy, and we really appreciate your support of the Rumble Room program. We really do. As always, I remain your humble servant, the mayor of North Tulip, the Modric man of Croatian team, and the Croatian sensation.
I think you and Modric are about the same age, Johnny. I'm equally grateful for everyone's support and wish everybody a very happy new year and a prosperous 2023. I'm Robin Adair, and rumble on.